Greetings, Internet faithful. I am some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and this is Rob Recaps Raw, the Superstar Shakedown edition for Monday, April 16th, 2018. You're going to notice that the graphic is a little bit different because I have both the Raw and SmackDown logos up. This is actually part one of a two-part review because effectively the Superstar Shakeup is really not as much a Raw or SmackDown set of episodes as it is really about the sort of trades and drafts and stuff like that. It's kind of your sweeps week sort of thing in terms of television, where you're really trying to go out and get some ratings and draw some buzz. Clearly, the weeks following WrestleMania are all about just trying to generate a little bit more buzz, moving into sort of a low period in the pay-per-view schedule. No one really looks forward to Backlash. The greatest Royal Rumble pay-per-view doesn't look like it's going to be the greatest pay-per-view on paper, at least. It looks like it's going to be bloated and overlong, and maybe, honestly, it looks like it's going to be a bit dull, and especially with all of the storylines getting a bit muddled up through this Superstar Shakeup. And I'll get into that as we do the reviews. So the TLDR for anyone who isn't interested in sitting through the next two reviews from me, I don't particularly like the way that they do the Superstar Shakeup, Shakedown, draft, whatever it is that they want to call it this year. I think that there are much more organic ways that you can get this done. Certainly you have the ability to have superstars cross brands by winning things like the Money in the Bank, winning at the Royal Rumble. You have things that you can introduce to make things more memorable. I mean, you can have cross-promotional stuff at the Survivor Series, sort of little invasion angles, especially now that you have cross-branded pay-per-views again. You can do these things in a much more organic way. You also have what they did with the Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn angle. You know, loser leaves a particular show after a blow-off match. There are so many ways that you can do this without it being as contrived and sort of putting the brakes on what was a fairly good run of momentum by the WWE, because the shows following WrestleMania were pretty good in terms of what their debuts, what they did, what they accomplished, with a couple notable exceptions. And I think this kind of ground everything to a halt. There were a couple of entertaining moments throughout, but overall the trades and everything seemed pretty underwhelming. And many of them seem to just kind of interfere with previously established storylines. And a whole lot of things are going to have to be rewritten very, very quickly because you've got two pay-per-views coming up in very, very quick succession. And you kind of have to work all these new trades into the whole deal for things to make sense. So we kick off Monday Night Raw with a pretty good segment. Sunil Singh interrupts Kurt Angle to announce that Jinder Mahal is the very first superstar to cross the brand line, so to speak, and bring the United States title over to Raw. Jinder Mahal, of course, making the whole heel spiel, demands better treatment because SmackDown was not the land of opportunity for him. Wants to be treated on the same caliber or on the same level as a guy like Brock Lesnar. Kurt Angle basically says, no, you're pretty much going to be like everybody else. Oh, and by the way, you're going to defend your title tonight. Out comes Jeff Hardy. And after I want to say a somewhat entertaining match, or entertaining by the standard of the Superstar Shakeup week, Jeff Hardy pins and beats Jinder Mahal to become the new United States champion. Now, I kind of like this. I like this, but I kind of don't like it. One of the things I absolutely couldn't understand for the life of me is why they took 24 hours and waited until SmackDown to talk about how Jeff Hardy became a Grand Slam champion, because he is a multiple-time tag team champion, multiple-time intercontinental champion. I believe he's won the WWE title on more than one occasion as well, this, of course, being his first United States title win. But they never mention the fact that he is a Grand Slam champion, in spite of the fact that they made such a big deal out of Randy Orton winning the Grand Slam championship with the U.S. title, and Seth Rollins winning the IC title at WrestleMania, becoming a Grand Slam champion. They've kind of, I don't know why they didn't bother mentioning how Hardy became a Grand Slam champion. It just seems to me like an unnecessary snub, especially in light of the fact that WWE loves its history moments. It loves those moments where they can revel in, how grand and how grandiose everything is. Although, on the other hand, I can kind of understand it because this now makes 2 consecutive pay-per-views where they've crowned a Grand Slam champion. They've now crowned a third Grand Slam champion 2 weeks after WrestleMania, or basically 8 days after WrestleMania. So it's almost getting to the point where they're going to start handing out Grand Slam championships inside boxes of Bootios. It's starting to mean less and less because it's being sort of dished out more and more to more and more people in such a short order of time. Changing gears, we get to the ongoing saga between Bayley and Sasha Banks. They have a match that was set up last week on Monday Night Raw after Bayley, air quotes, inadvertently cost Sasha Banks the match against Mandy Rose of Absolution. The match is pretty hard hitting. There was a big botch when Bayley went to the ropes to try crossbody. But they recovered very, very well, both in the ring and on the microphone, so I'll give them props for that. They flowed with it just to claim that the emotion was overwhelming Bayley, and it was just something that it can affect the concentration of even the greatest performer. I thought that was a fantastic way of saving face in that regard. The match was pretty good, back and forth. Really loved that dive through the rope into a Hurricane Rana by Bayley. That's a move that I would like to see more of. Sasha Banks got in some great offense. They seem to have given a specific name to the double knee move that she does. For the life of me, I can't remember what it is right now, and I don't feel like going back and looking it up. And we keep going. There's some good back and forth. We get to the end of the match with Sasha Banks putting Bayley in the Banks statement, and we're testing the resilience of Bayley. Will she tap? Will Sasha Banks finally overcome Bayley and finally beat her? Out come the Riot Squad and lay the beatdown on Sasha Banks. So we now know who the next set of superstars are who made the jump over from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw. And this is where the WWE had a storyline at a crossroads, and they screwed it up, because this would have been the absolute perfect time to turn Bayley heel. You have the Riot Squad coming out. It's a 3-on-1 beatdown on Sasha Banks while Bayley is laying off in the corner. You could have pulled the trigger on this, finally, this way overdue heel turn to make Bayley interesting again, to have the Riot Squad pick her up, make it look like they were going to beat the living crap out of her, instead dust her off, raise her hand, give her a hug, and then you could cut a promo at a later time to explain the actions of what happened and turn Bayley heel, and then you've instantly made Bayley interesting as a character again. Instead, what they do is they pick her up and they just beat the crap out of her. So instead of pulling the trigger on a money feud, let's face it, this is something that would draw for other pay-per-views in terms of a singles match on the card without a title on the line. Instead of turning Bayley full heel, turning it into a proper feud that can go long-term into SummerSlam or beyond, what we've done instead is we've taken this, quasi-quarrel, this kind of sisterly spat that's been going on since the Royal Rumble. It's really been going on since the Royal Rumble, when Sasha Banks eliminated Bayley and then went further into Elimination Chamber, and then again at WrestleMania with the elimination from the Women's Battle Royal. They could have finally pulled the trigger and finally done something with this, and instead they've decided to do nothing. And I have pretty much officially lost interest in this feud because they're constantly spinning their wheels and refusing to put it in gear and let it roll. I don't know what they're planning on doing. It just doesn't make any sense. So what could have been a really, really good segment on this show, potentially a great segment, potentially the most interesting segment of the night, became yet another, let's spin the wheels, let's tease something that's not going to happen, and people are no longer starting to care, myself among them. Next up, we have Heath Slater and Rhino in the ring, and they, of course, are challenging the Authors of Pain to a rematch. Nothing interesting here. The one thing that I did notice, the biggest takeaway from this is that the Authors of Pain have changed their ring introduction. I mean, with the obvious absence of Paul Ellering, they're also no longer coming out in the gas masks and the scarves. What's up with that? That was a big part of their entrance. They just looked like these gigantic, they looked like something that was out of like Fallout New Vegas, like a mini boss from a Fallout game with like the gas mask and the scarves and everything. They looked like they were just going to come out and completely kick your ass. And then, they take off the mask and they look even meaner underneath. Now they just sort of come out in their toques and they just walk to the ring. It's a very dumbed down look for them, if I can explain it that way. The other thing that I wasn't really a fan of is if you're going to book the Authors of Pain as an incredibly dominant, brutal, brutish type of tag team, pretty much like your Raw version of the Bludgeon Brothers, why are they giving up so much offense to Slater and Rhino? It should have been Slater and Rhino jump the Authors of Pain, they get in about 2 or 3 moves, and then the Authors of Pain just completely take over and dominate from then on. They were quite giving to Rhino and Slater. I think the match went a little bit longer than it should have if you're going to establish them as the dominant force of the future of the tag team division on Raw. So overall, I mean, it was a match. It happened. It ate up time. We didn't get any real news of anyone new coming to the party in terms of call-ups from NXT or in terms of superstars moving over from SmackDown. So it was just sort of another forgettable match on the card. This is followed up by a Miz TV segment where Miz introduces Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn as the newest members of Monday Night Raw to come over from SmackDown. Kurt Angle comes out to say that no, this didn't happen because neither man won the match last week. Sami Zayn hams it up, pulls out an email from Stephanie McMahon, who thank God was not in the building or did not appear on the video screens via satellite or in any type of pre-taped type of thing. And the email basically states that by her executive order, she is overruling Kurt Angle, and that there's nothing that Kurt can do about it. Kurt actually came out to say that he wasn't there for Sami and Kevin Owens. He was out there to tell The Miz that he was going to SmackDown, so we know who's moving to SmackDown right away. And the other thing is that the Miztourage will not be joining him. Oh, and by the way, for your send-off, we're going to have a huge 10-man tag team, so it's going to be 4 people that are already on the roster, 4 main stars, and someone who is new to Monday Night Raw. So they're teasing a new arrival from SmackDown or from NXT for the main event. Now, normally I would be in favor of a segment like this. The problem is that they kind of rely on the Deus Ex Machina type of resolution a little bit too often in the WWE, where it's, they put up a high-stakes match for something to happen to drum up the fan interest, and then you get the result or non-result of the match to kind of further a storyline, and instead of furthering a storyline in a natural way that kind of gives you more and more maybe matches, maybe they could have had Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens at the Greatest Royal Rumble face off against each other with the winner getting a contract. They could have made it, a different type of match, like a stipulation match. And then if that didn't work, you have a non-ending there, and then you take it to Backlash and you have them go there. So you still get your Sami Zayn and your Kevin Owens. They're just not officially part of any brand. And you could have made this interesting as a longer-term storyline with an actual payoff. Instead, what they do is they do it by email. Deus Ex Machina, we read a piece of paper, it's Stephanie McMahon, oh my god, Stephanie McMahon's a heel, lol. And it's just sort of status quo from there. I think they could have booked this a lot smarter by having, the two of them face off again at the Greatest Royal Rumble, and you could have had it be like a, I don't know what kind of stipulation that you would do, but maybe a Backlash, you would turn it into a ladder match with the contract up above on the ladder, and you could do it that way. It just seems to me you could have taken this in much more interesting ways, especially since Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are capable of putting on such great matches, and you would have those great matches on the Raw brand, but for the Raw contract, so to speak. It just seems to me like a big wasted opportunity. Next up, we have the finals of the Tag Team Eliminator Tournament as the Revival take on the Woken Warriors. This match was not especially great. You kind of knew where this was going. You knew that Wyatt and Hardy were going to win because for some reason they seem to be allergic to pushing the Revival, even though the Revival are clearly a good tag team, certainly deserving of a tag team run, and I think that having them as a heel team that can carry the belts opens up a lot of opportunities. They could make great heel champions in terms of, dirty victories or taking count-out losses to save their titles, disqualification losses to save their titles. Kind of like the way the Honky Tonk Man did the Intercontinental Championship, like way back in the day, where he held, it was held on by hook or by crook, but it was never really clean wins. I think Dash and Dawson could do that for the tag team division and make it seem credible because of the old school mentality that they follow as part of their gimmick. But I do see why that they're banking on Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt to kind of carry the division forward, because you can actually have them act as faces or as heels. You can basically put them against anybody and make it credible, so they can essentially defend and have feuds against everybody. Now, if they're going to do this, they can't do this half-assed. And as much as it pains me, and as much as these promos are going to hurt to listen to, you got to go full on with the weirdness factor. You can't do a half-assed job on this. They really are going to have to let Wyatt and Hardy have, don't give them a script. Let them do their thing and have everybody else react to it. That's really the only way that this is going to work. So this is why I think the WWE is going to screw this up, especially in light of the fact that the very first thing that they decided to focus on with Woken Matt Hardy was the most irritating part of his character, which was his laughter. We move over to the women's division for our next match, which is Ember Moon versus Mickie James. Nia Jax comes out on commentary. Good pop as she comes out to do commentary. I mentioned last week in my Raw review that it seemed that they were trying to make her, I don't want to say more feminine, and I don't want to come across the wrong way, but they were really kind of sexing her up a little bit because now she's a face. It seems that they're continuing this. They've got her, really nice fashionable top. They got her in a pair of tight leather pants, some nice boots, walking out over to the commentary table. So she's kind of dressed up a lot more than what you would normally see of her. That combined with the newer ring attire that's a little more revealing up top, seems to me that they're turning her less into an irresistible force in terms of a force of nature and more of irresistible in terms of sex appeal. I don't know if that's true, and I hope that they're not I hope they're not being that reductive with her character, because that would be a shame. It wouldn't do her any type of service in terms of what she can do and how she can carry the title. So I hope that they keep her in the sort of physically dominant category of women's champion. One of the things I found incredibly odd about this was they were supposed to have both Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss doing commentary, and they put their chairs one right next to the other, which to me, that's not a recipe for any type of success. Needless to say, Alexa Bliss does not come out to do commentary. Instead, she does a backstage type of thing where she talks about being bullied by Nia Jax. And as much as I complained about Stephanie McMahon's selling of the armbar on Raw last week and how it looked terrible, I'm going to blame this one on the writing, because Alexa Bliss did what she could with this promo. It was clearly a scripted promo, and it just was completely unconvincing. It just came off really, really bad. It did nothing to really further the storyline along. They could have taken this in a much better direction, but didn't. You could have easily played off the whole thing of how Alexa Bliss kept Nia Jax around to protect her title, to run interference, to soften up opponents. Instead, they're now trying to do the whole reverse thing where it's not Alexa who's a bully for, dropping fat jokes and everything. It's Nia who's a bully just because she's physically more imposing. I don't think there's going to be anybody who's buying that. I don't think anybody finds that clever in any kind of way. As far as the in-ring goes, the match itself was actually pretty forgettable. It seemed to be running at about 3/4 speed. I've seen Ember Moon in NXT, and her matches were a lot more exciting there. The best part of the match was the closer. It was basically the finisher, where Ember Moon hit an Eclipse, and Mickie James sold it the same way that The Rock used to sell the Stone Cold Stunner, where he'd flop around halfway across the ring. That's exactly what Mickie James did with the Eclipse. She damn near fell out of the ring selling the move, which I thought was cool. I mean, if you're going to sell a move as devastating, that's kind of one way to do it. But overall, forgettable segment, forgettable stuff on commentary. Nia Jax, I mean, she's got some good charisma. She's holding her own on the mic. She held her own very well on commentary. But as far as this whole thing goes, I will be happy once it's over after Backlash and we can maybe get Nia into a better feud with someone else. Next up, we have Dolph Ziggler coming out and talking about how basically he is now on Monday Night Raw. He cuts his usual boring heat-killing speech before the Titus Worldwide music comes out. Titus O'Neil offers to add Dolph Ziggler as part of the Worldwide brand, saying that, between the wrestling and the stand-up comedy that Dolph Ziggler is doing, that he is I believe it is a multi-platform superstar is how he put it. Ziggler gets on the mic to say that he did come to Monday Night Raw, but did not come alone. out comes Drew McIntyre, and Drew and Dolph Ziggler basically destroy Titus Worldwide. Now, the part that I don't know if this is going to hurt anyone. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's possible at this point to bury Ziggler any more than he already has been. He is essentially a high-class jobber at this point. Drew McIntyre got all of the pop, and Ziggler, no one really cared. No one really gave a damn about Dolph Ziggler being on Monday Night Raw. And considering how many championships he's won and how recently he's been in the world title picture and how recently he's been United States champion because they change champions every 3 weeks, it's a little sad for Dolph Ziggler. I mean, but at least he's on a different show. Maybe they'll give him a bit of a push with Drew McIntyre, but I don't see it being very long before they split those two up. Interesting to see McIntyre as a heel. But yeah, it happened. It was a great way to introduce Ziggler to Raw and to bring McIntyre up from NXT. It's a segment that happened, mostly forgettable. You're probably going to get a couple Titus Worldwide matches, and then things are going to move on from there. And because we haven't had nearly enough promos on the show, out comes Captain Charisma, Roman Reigns, to talk about how that dastardly evil Brock Lesnar isn't in the building again tonight, but Roman Reigns was diligent and showed up to work. The WWE Universe did not care. The best that he got was an apathetic type of response. For the most part, he got booed. Roman sucks chants were clearly audible. And I'm going to say one thing. If they're going to try and put him over as someone who is sympathetic, someone who is being put, held down and held back, get rid of the man bun, because man buns are obnoxious. The gold chain, everything about the way Roman Reigns comes to the ring just screams entitled douchebag. So that's not going to generate a lot of sympathy. Thankfully, the plug is pulled on the segment by Samoa Joe coming out, and oddly enough, cutting almost exactly the same promo he did on the WrestleMania follow-up on Raw. So last week and this week, he cut almost exactly the same promo. The crowd still loved it anyway. They do teasing an altercation in the ring, but Samoa Joe says, nope, gonna do it on my time. I'll see you at Backlash. The fans did not like that, I think mostly because they wanted to see Samoa Joe just beat the crap out of Roman Reigns right now and just get it over with and hopefully injure him so Roman Reigns can't win the title in Saudi Arabia. We cut backstage to Ronda Rousey with Kurt Angle, and they're doing a good job right now of protecting Ronda Rousey in terms of promos. They're kind of keeping things so that they can make her more comfortable, because I think in front of the crowd she does less well than she does in a backstage segment. So I think they're doing a good job of protecting her there. She came off as a lot better, a lot more natural. There was one little kind of unnatural bit when Natalya comes in, the newest superstar to make her way from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw. There's a moment of recognition. Kurt Angle kind of asks if they know each other. Ronda says, yeah, we used to train together. They hug. So it looks like Natalya is not only moving over to Monday Night Raw, she's also going to have a face run. And that will transition into a match versus Mandy Rose. So Natalya comes out on her own to face Mandy Rose, who has Sonya Deville in her corner. The match itself was, again, largely forgettable. Felt like it was in slow motion. They were just kind of going through the motions to kill time between superstar announcements, it seems. We get to the end of the match with Natalya winning via sharpshooter. After the match, Deville comes in. It's a 2-on-1 beatdown. Ronda's music hits. Ronda power walks down with the total bitch face on, the game face, the face that she should have had when she came out at WrestleMania. She should have started with the bitch face and just worked her way from there. But full credit, she comes out, Absolution Bail, and then Mandy Rose kind of hypes up Sonya Deville, saying, hey, you're MMA too, you've got that background, you've got the experience in a WWE ring, you can take her on. Sonya Deville goes in and gets taken out in about 4 seconds by Ronda Rousey. Absolution powder out, and then we have our moment where Rousey checks up on Natalya. So Natalya is basically turning face right now for her run on Monday Night Raw, at least for the next little while. My guess is that at some point they're just going to have Natalya turn heel because that's where she's best, and probably turn against Rousey to give Rousey a decent feud against a veteran who also has some technical skills, who can probably carry a pretty decent match with Rousey. At least that's my guess. I could be wrong. We cut backstage where the Bar are going over the implications of who they will face in Saudi Arabia for the Raw Tag Team titles, that being, of course, the Woken Warriors. And out come Breezango, who issue a citation against the bar for their outfits, saying that absolutely nothing matches, there's no theme to what they're wearing. This was a very, very fun little segment. I like the fact that they didn't split up Breezango. I like that they brought them over to Monday Night Raw because I think they did all that they could do in terms of the Fashion Police segment on SmackDown. This sets up a match a little bit later in the night where you get actually Tyler Breeze pinning Cesaro, I believe. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't fully paying attention during the match. I was a little distracted during this match. But the Fashion Police do get a surprise victory over the bar on their Monday Night Raw debut, and the crowd kind of ate it up. It was a nice little kind of palate cleanser after everything that's happened on the show, and it was a pretty good way to set up the main event 10-man tag match. Speaking of the 10-man tag team match, we get our promised main event along with our surprise entrant or surprise arrival on Monday Night Raw. The Miz Taraj and The Miz, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn make their way to the ring first, and then you get Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman, and then the lights go out and a little plink of piano, followed by a glorious chant lets you know that, yes, the glorious one, Bobby Roode, has made his way from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw. The crowd is in favor of this. I think Roode is a very good addition to Monday Night Raw. Although he's a good addition wherever he is, he's just a really great wrestler. Surprised that he's staying as a babyface for this one and that he's not making a heel turn. Maybe that'll probably come later. Probably he'll get into a feud for the Intercontinental Championship, I would imagine, especially in light of the fact that The Miz is moving over to SmackDown. Anyway, we'll get into the implications. I may have to turn this into a 3-part type of video. But anyway, this match was good, not great. It wasn't. It was kind of your house show match, maybe an elevated house show match. It felt a little bit more hokey than your typical Monday Night Raw main event match. It didn't feel very main event-ish. It just felt like this is the biggest match on the card, so we'll just put it on last. Lots of chaotic spots, getting people into the match, a few hot tags here and there. Eventually, you get everybody kind of taking each other out of the ring, while Braun Strowman and The Miz kind of do their recovery spots. It leaves Braun Strowman and The Miz as the legal men in the ring. The entertaining part, I guess, or the most entertaining part, was The Miz trying to tag in both members, or one at a time, each member of the Miz Taraj, and both of them powdering off the ring apron to basically let The Miz take his own beating for once. Because the Miz Taraj does not have to worry about supporting the Miz anymore. And so they went off on their own. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the two of them, because they're no longer the Miz Taraj. They're just now Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. So how they repackage it is anybody's guess. They got a week or so to come up with something, but we'll see what it does. Faces win after a Braun Strowman power slam, and the power slam was one of those where everybody on Strowman's team is like, yeah, do it, and they're kind of like pumping up the crowd, and the big pop after the power slam, the 1, 2, 3. The show goes off the air, and that's Monday Night Raw. We also get a few slides. I hate this when you get a 3-hour show and you can't get everything in, and you have to do sort of the slideshow recap of everything in case people forgot that they saw the Riot Squad were on the show about an hour ago. They go through a bunch of stuff. Anyway, show goes off the air. Overall, this was a very forgettable edition of Monday Night Raw in terms of the matches. In terms of what they've done as far as the shakeup of the rosters go, it's interesting, but at the same time, it's messy, and I'll have to get into the messiness at a later time. This will probably be there'll probably be a part 3 to this video. I know I said I was going to do it as a 2-part, but they're probably going to need a 3rd part to kind of go over the aftermath. Overall, I'd say that the show held my attention, but it didn't really go out of its way to entertain. It was more of trying to see what was going to happen and who was going to show up. But then again, it was spaced so close to last week's show after WrestleMania, where they did a much better job of introducing the call-ups, especially when the way that they introduced Ember Moon and the way that they introduced the Authors of Pain. I think of, back to that, which was like 1 week ago, and then you compare it to the way that they introduced Superstars this week, which I thought was a lot less natural, was kind of a lot more awkward, and it just kind of came off as a lot more contrived. I'm hoping that as of next week, as we build into the next couple of quick pay-per-views in succession, that they resolve all the loose ends and kind of put some sensical storylines into places, so that way we can start building towards SummerSlam. Because yes, I understand SummerSlam's in August, we're only in April right now, but you really need to start building programs, because this whole month to month thing is really not interesting. Anyway, that was Monday Night Raw. That was Raw Recaps. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.